Welcome to Beyond the Bottom Line, the podcast where founders and business owners get in-depth insights and actionable takeaways from industry experts. We're here to help maximize your revenue, streamline your operations, and keep more of your hard-earned money. Now here's your host, Miguel Alexander Centeno.
Thanks for joining. I'm Miguel, founder and CEO of Centurion Firm, where I have the honor of leading a small tax strategy team serving businesses just like yours. And the cool thing about what I get to do is I get to work with businesses who are doing much cooler things. I do a deep dive with clients, mentors, and businesses I admire about their world, how they think about the area that they're an expert in, and we dive into how you as a business owner or operator can learn from the best. I'm joined today by Art Shectman. Art Shectman is the founder and CEO of Elephant Ventures, a digital innovation firm helping enterprises turn AI from experiment into real operational impact. An MIT-trained engineer and longtime technology leader, Art has spent more than 20 years building and scaling innovative systems, including co-founding Ultranuts, one of the world's leading employers of autism spectrum talent. Today, he works hands-on with organizations deploying AI workflows and infrastructure at scale. I'm really excited about this conversation. Art, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Miguel. Thanks, man. Really happy to be on and excited to chat.
I am too, because I think AI is all the rage these days. And it's really important, I've learned, to distinguish those that are just getting on the train and those who were on the bicycle years ago. You are an entrepreneur, and I always ask, looking back to your earliest years, where do you think that started? Were you inspired by someone that was a teacher? Are you from a family of entrepreneurs?
So funny you should mention entrepreneurs and teachers. So my mom was a math teacher for forever, and definitely came from a family of academics and engineers. And then my grandpa, who I'm named after, he passed away before I was born. The stories in our family of his wild exploits as an entrepreneur were bananas. And so there was always this kind of, magical, almost like mythology of our family of my grandpa, Arthur, and the shenanigans he got up to. And so I always had it, as something that was revered and exciting in my head from the time I was a little kid. And then my mom will tell you the story. We were visiting my Aunt Lil down in Texas, and they just wanted me out of the house. And so they're like, oh, there's all these weeds in the yard. Here's a bag. I'll pay you a penny to go pick weeds out of the yard, come back when you're done.
Yeah. And
so I was just gone for hours and hours and hours. At some point, I don't know, 3-4 hours later, they're like, are you done? And I was like, yep. And she's like, all right, Lil is this little old lady and just super sweet at that point. I think I must have been 5. And she's like, how many weeds did you pick? And I'm like, 507.
Wow.
Okay. That was
did
my
you get
first.
paid?
I did. That was my first client invoice, I guess.
Paid on delivery.
Yeah. COD.
COD. I love that. You obviously took academics very seriously. Tell me a little bit about that path from, whether it was college or the workforce, where you said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go out on my own.
So coming out of school, I missed the memo that you're supposed to interview for jobs when people come to campus. And I don't remember why. I think I was in the machine shop at that point. I was in the artificial intelligence lab at MIT. We were building autonomous micro robots for the U.S. government. And actually my thesis advisor was the guy who founded iRobot. We used to be called IS Robotics, and I missed the memo. And that they're the Roomba people. And before that, it was military robots. So anyway, long story short, I missed the memo about how to get a job. I walked into my thesis advisor's office, and I was like, I forgot to get a job. He's like, do you know anyone who has anything that needs doing? He's like, yeah, come work for the research robotics company. I was like, okay. And so that was my experience of being employed. And then I wound up building one of the world's first underwater walking robots. And we worked on this micro tank, essentially, that would do munitions clearance, cleanup post-conflict. And so it was really cool. But then, startup bug and craziness. It was the middle of the .com boom at that point. And I moved down to Wall Street and started just going from one startup to another over a couple of years, and they got bought by another startup, and then, went this public, and it was just crazy. And so I had a tiny bit of cash, and I was like, all right, let me start something. It just had always been the plan. And I started something, and it failed in epic fashion in the middle of the dot-com bust. It was just terrible timing. And it kind of licked my wounds after that and had some weird odd jobs. I wound up being the shutdown guy for a venture capital fund. And I just went from startup to startup, shutting things down. And
what do you do as the shutdown guy?
You kill people's dreams and try not to get beat up. And then you sell random assets that they've purchased and try to get any kind of liquidity back for the investors. Is the singular time in my life where I've had armed protection. And that's a whole other story. But that was depressing because it was like an MBA trial by fire of all the things that could go horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And so it was fascinating and really instructional for me. But ultimately, I was like, okay, I want to build something. I don't want to be the destruction guy. So had a couple odd jobs working in enterprise and stuff like that. And it was just, I got frustrated and I wanted to pick my team. And ultimately, I just wanted to surround myself with high-powered product management and product leadership people and engineering leadership people. And so that motivated me to take the jump. I had a couple at that point. This is 2004, so 22 years ago we founded Elephant. It was right at the dawn of internet marketing, and there's a whole bunch of math behind it and optimization stuff and a bunch of integration stuff you had to do to make it all work.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of friends in advertising firms that didn't really have a lot of technical folks at that point, and didn't know how to do it. So we're like, all right, we can do that for you. And that was it. That's how we get started. Really, I wanted to pick my team, and we've carried that kind of cultural founding touchstone, whatever, forward for 22 years. And it's been our saving grace every single crisis the company had along the years. I like to say the process of being an entrepreneur is the practice of continually attempting to go out of business and failing.
And failing at going out of business.
Yeah.
I like that. It highlights that you got to swing for the fences. And I'm curious, when you started, was it bootstrapped? Did you take some seed capital?
Yeah, no, all bootstrapped. We just got out the door with relationships and a customer from the last thing, and just started working. Hung out our shingle and said, "Okay, I can do stuff for you," and had enough of a personal network that people wanted me to do stuff. And strangely, for 18 of our 22 years, we've had no sales force. It was all just, we did great work and word of mouth, and we were the special, when you have an emergency and you need impossible technical things done, call the elephant herd. And that's kept us in business for a long time. And then we started to scale up, got a little bit bigger. We got, wound up having teams in Kenya, in New Zealand, and a larger team in the Philippines. And I just had more mouths to feed. And I was like, yeah, we should probably, invest in some meaningful sales. Have some more.
So your initial business was financed by customer number one?
I think it was financed by my stomach. I think I stopped eating regular food and ate a bunch of ramen, and it's just super cheap on everything and existed on essentially no capital. But yeah, essentially we were customer funded.
So was there a period, and I think it's important because I always think about, the first early days of becoming entrepreneurs. I know the business model. I think I have enough relationships, but I don't know how it's supposed to go between day zero and I don't know what the point at which that switches, but did you have employees at the very beginning, or did you kind of build it up, get some margin, and then hire?
So I started, it was me and my brother. And that lasted maybe 8 or 9 months. And then at that point, I think he got pregnant with the third of what would be 4 kids or something like that. And it was time for a house and a minivan and whatever. And he's like, dude, I need a job. This isn't going to work for me anymore. And so then it was just me. And then we used some contractors. So we limited our liability. Payroll and whatever when things were pretty lean and clients were, spotty. And then inch by inch, we just kept growing from there and adding headcount as we had dependable pipeline of client work.
Yeah. And I think consulting can be tough sometimes. I mean, how would you describe that early service? Was it was it consulting? Was it service, or did you frame as like what building?
No, it's all been it's all work for hire hourly consulting since the very beginning. We really like learned very early, and I think I could pass like a forensic accounting exam at this point and like a PhD level cash flow forecasting exam of some kind. But really, you just live and die by your cash flow and understanding like the clear working capital needs of your business. Like some businesses are successful and they grow themselves out of business, or they just have client disruptions that mess up their working capital, and then they don't have money for the payroll, and then they wind up failing. And that's the advice I give to like every burgeoning entrepreneur. I'm like, know your finances, know your cash flow, like know the inner workings of how the money moves through your business and where the profit comes from, and just know it cold and always have like an intuitive sense of where it is and how you're doing, because that's how you go out of business.
Yeah. And how long do you think it took before you were like, okay, this is our product, this is what our like unit economics needs to look like? I mean, did you figure that out kind of intuitively, or did you kind of have a thesis and then, kind of updating it as you went?
That was probably 10 years in or something when we really could dial in like the unit model of it. Cause I remember there was a time we sat down and we're like, okay, for all the people we have, for all of our expenses, sick days, vacation days, national holidays, and look backwards, approximate gaps between projects, so utilization rates based on like empirically observed data. We sort of like cooked that all together, everything down to like, cell phone reimbursement and internet service and, Metro Pass subsidies and like every possible penny of expense. And we're like, okay, based on our forecasted utilization, what should our target margin be, and what are our all-in expenses, and then who are our SG&A people that we need to load on top of those expenses, blah, blah, blah. And we built it all up into a rate card that ultimately like built in the right kind of margins. That was the first time we really fully nailed it. Like we understood what our service was. We understood how to like go to market with it and what people were responding to or not. But from like a pricing standpoint and knowing the unit economics of the whole thing, that was like the first true, like really clean exercise of it.
I think that's really insightful. So, a decade of, I'm going to say you weren't reckless, but I mean, you didn't have it. It took a decade to dial it in. I mean, I think it's really important. You talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, they're like, oh, I need to dial this in. It's like, no, you need to run, like you said, cash flow is what matters.
You need a customer. Like you could do all the spreadsheet modeling of your unit model you want and whatever. Like it's great. Like spend an afternoon and do that, but then go get a customer and actually operate the business and see if your assumptions were correct. And so there was just a ton of iterating on like how to charge and what people would accept as terms and conditions and payment terms and everything else. I would say maybe the best smaller mid-sized business when you're feeling stuck or your margins aren't where they need to be, ask your customers for what you need. Like we now are in the habit of asking for mobilization payments, which is basically a kind way of saying, look, I know it's going to take you forever to figure out how to pay us. And I don't want to be 60 days in and have you tell me you need another 90 days to figure out how to pay me, or you forgot to get the PO approved, or you didn't have the budget you thought yet. So we learned over the years, like, look, let's just solve that right at the start. There, like day one, when we start doing work, there's a mobilization payment. And really, I think it does two things. It lets us prove that the administrative setup of how to pay us and the budget allocation is there, so that we know we can get paid, and like that's all been worked out. But then also it helps defray like some of the working capital needs that we have, because you start a project, you do some work, then you bill for it at the end of the month, and then you collect, and maybe it's net 45, hopefully. And so, the more you can front load that, the less working capital you wind up needing. And we were terrified. We're just like, that's never going to happen. People are never going to accept that. And people have not batted an eye. And so the lesson I tell some folks is just ask for what you need. Like they want you to be successful, and they want your business to run and still be around when they need you. And if you need certain parameters to make it work, most people are pretty approachable.
That's fantastic. And just last question, kind of like the building, like how did the contacts you built working various jobs, even in school, how did those contacts help you when you started your business?
It makes all the difference. If I could say there were two things that I took away from school. One was we learned how to learn. And that has served me like really well. Just knowing how to go into something at extremely high velocity with tremendous complexity and just eat it for lunch and have an answer by dinner time. Like that kind of high velocity learning capability and really the ability to, I guess, mentally model like abstractions of the problem space and see it and know where the problems and the bottlenecks, like that's served me really well throughout my career. And then the connections I made, because I got fortunate enough to go to a great school, and the people that kind of self-selected into that environment were pretty intense. And you just, the long-term outcomes they've had in their careers has been helpful. And, you know, any school or any social group you're in, there's just people want to work with people that they know and trust, and anything that helps you break through that kind of trust barrier will serve you really, really well. So I just, you know, I've been super thankful that I have the network that I have, and advise people to always be building that network. And if there are any kinds of groupings you have that help you feel connected or trusted by a group of people, it's always worth investing in. And the theory of the karmic amplification of time, like doing a little favor for somebody now, well, 20 years from now, they're going to be in a different position. They're going to have more influence and power in their career. And the scope of effort to repay that favor you did for them 20 years ago, with the same amount of effort, the magnitude of impact of that favor they might repay is 100-fold. And so there's, you know, a lot of people say, you know, whatever you put out there comes back to you 10x. It's true. Like there's this weird karmic time dilation amplification effect of just investing in people and always making time for people and doing people 5-minute favors. It's always worth doing.
I agree. Well, that's very helpful. Well, let's talk about Elephant Ventures. My first question is why Elephant Ventures?
So this is the part where I wish I had some amazing, like I was stranded in the desert and, you know, and this elephant came out. I don't know. Anyway, I've always loved elephants. I had a stuffed Dumbo when I was a kid. He was my buddy. And actually, one of the coolest moments, my mom had saved it. So like 40 years later, I gave it to my kids. And when they were tiny, and they loved it too. So I don't know. They're super intelligent. They're practical. They have this group allo mothering kind of habits of just taking care of things. They remember they're dead and remember where they came from. You definitely wouldn't want to piss one off. And they're super strong and capable of accomplishing amazing things. And I just had this tremendous affinity for elephants my whole life. So became Elephant Ventures.
I'm curious if you carry like elephant metaphors at all in like the company or teams or anything like that.
Yeah, we call ourselves the Funt Herd, Phunt. We call ourselves Funts, or the member of the Funt Herd. We had a blog series for a while that we called Rumbles. We had another project that we called Project Ivory, which I guess is not so great for the elephants since that's like not a great product. We have pretty cool elephant swag all over the place. And,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'll share. Yeah, we love elephants so much so that our kids' wallpaper is like this cute little repeating elephant with a bird sitting on top. And I love that
awesome.
Contrast of like fragility, right? That like a bird can sit on an elephant. But I actually want to go back because I didn't realize in college you worked on artificial intelligence. So actually I want to rewind back to that. What is artificial intelligence in the span of, you know, your career, and how has it changed?
Oh man, like that's a 35-year story arc. That's a long story, but to compress it down, when I was in the lab, essentially like subsumption architecture was my thesis advisor's big introduction and his storied concept for AI. And essentially it was the process of having a bunch of defined behaviors and then letting observed sensors or weights or environmental factors determine which behavior was active at any given moment. And so you wound up with this simplified form of autonomy where you didn't have to prescriptively describe every rule, every condition, every calculation. You said, here are the things I want you to do. And here are the situations or input feedback, like sensor observations that should trigger you to do these things. And here's like a weighting matrix of how to decide between them and do the things you should based on the conditions that exist. And so in some sense, it's not so different. And you could map that to kind of providing the right context and saying, here's your input signals of context, and then do the right thing based on the context provided. I think the big change has been that the AI systems now have this ability to do inference on demand. So you have, there's all these traditional AI tools and traditional machine learning techniques and tactics and whatever else. And the big shift now that's sort of democratized access to AI is that you had all these problems where you needed a person. It was outside of the rules, or there were tasks that were really better served by humans. And these days, when you have the ability to deploy like inference or to draw these kind of fuzzy, probabilistically determined conclusions and create outputs based on that, you all of a sudden have the ability to just do a bunch more stuff that used to need a human. And it's the bulk in our economy that we have these days, particularly in knowledge work. There's so much lower hanging fruit in administrative and workflow based things and small inference based judgments that people are doing that are now subject to effective execution by agentic systems or AI agents. And I think that's the big unlock that happened is instead of like some esoteric, very complicated to understand, very mathy machine learning thing that could solve very difficult like math and I would say like constructed problems that had like defined complexity to them. Now the everyday person can deploy AI systems to solve day-to-day challenges very simply.
I'll just share quickly that I think what I understood and agreed with, something nodding my head, was that, we've had the experience of building tech and now building with AI. And I would just say like the thing that I recognize is when, like in the old world, I would even say like 5 years ago, we built tech, we had to solve for all the edge cases. And, the things the dev team would get annoyed with us at, it's like, no, like we have to give specific parameters around this. And what's been interesting as we're building with AI is AI is almost thinking through those edge cases. And in some cases, it's updating its own code to solve for them when they get, confronted. So like in tax, right, it's like if you didn't specify line 14, the first box, and like what you get uploaded has like no value in there, right? Like from a tech world, it's like we'd have to hopefully not refactor, but like we'd have to change that. And now, I mean, it's really powerful. We're seeing these like self-updating systems, just speeding along like what we're from a building's perspective. It's speeding.
Yeah, it's amazing. The bottleneck becomes discernment of what you want to do. And I think that's the thing that's underpinning like every executive's anxiety right now. Maybe it's two things. The first is just freaking keeping up. There's so much noise and so many products and so many new ideas and so much to learn. It's just really hard to keep up. And then it's different every 90 or 120 days anyway. And so, having a partner like us that is out there in the trenches, learning it all day, every day for you, we've seen that be helpful. Like just find your soulmates, your AI Sherpas to bring you along the journey. But then really like once you've got kind of a baseline of knowledge about what it is and what it might do for you, discerning what you should do, like the whole product management thinking facilitated kind of creation of the idea or the spec around what you want to build. That's the new bottleneck. That's kind of governed by the wetware in our heads that says I can only think through stuff this fast. And it's funny you say about the self-updating stuff, and you used to have to figure all that stuff out. We're finding more and more that clients are delegating that responsibility to us and our oversight of our agentic product ops tools to fill in the blanks for us, right? You don't have to think through all the edge cases. There's enough body of contextual knowledge to apply that the edge cases get filled in, and it's far easier, faster, cheaper to build something like delegating that edge case decision-making to us and our agent swarms so that we can just show up with something built and tell us what's wrong with it, rather than like spending, hundreds and hundreds of hours with us thinking through painfully all of these edge cases and everything else. it's easier to just say, here's like broad strokes what I want. And we're like, great, we got it. And then we build it and come back a week later and like, here it is. What's wrong with it? And like, then we focus our discussion to the stuff that really matters for your business. And it accelerates that whole discernment of like what to build cycle. But it's a big, scary shift. It's like, I guess okay, fill in all the blanks for me. Sure. Go build it. And fingers crossed. And having that trust that it's going to come out okay. That's like the biggest shift we've seen in our working relationships.
Yeah, no, and I'm feeling two things. One is the relief that those, kind of product edge case scoping meetings are kind of getting dwindled down. And then the second thing that I'm feeling is a little anxiety around like, do I really know what I want, what I'm building to do? And I want to double click on the hardest thing is to discern what you want it to do. How are organizations struggling with that? How are you helping them work through that?
Yeah, so I'd say there's a couple of dimensions of why people struggle. The first one is keeping up, which I talked about. The next one is really like their organization, big or small, is in some state of evolution of AI capabilities. And they're used to kind of knowing the landscape and figuring out how to move and taking a clear action based on a relatively fixed set stage of tools or internal tech capability, right? Yeah. And the answer is that is just evolving at ludicrous speed all the time. So you're building in this ever shifting environment. It's hard to feel really comfortable building essentially not on sand, but like on some Play-Doh, maybe, I don't know, something that's squishy and moving around all the time. Right. And so helping people get comfortable with the idea of building in a short cycle, building for the right now, building in an environment where they have evolving foundational tech or AI or governance capabilities. That's part of it. It's hard, right? And it's a willful mental shift of saying, I'm going to build for the right now. I'm going to build for the cases that can be successful right now. And I'm okay learning from that process and rebuilding when I get to that end of the 100-day sprint or something like that to say like, okay, I got something in market. I got some value from it, but now I also learned how to discern better for the next chapter or the next iteration. And there might be totally new tools available or on market when you go to reassess and rebuild. And you just getting comfortable with that shifting landscape of tooling and your own internal capability development is hard. And then I think picking the right thing. It sounds stupid, but like we have this kind of agent value canvas that we use to understand, or we call it the agent opportunity canvas. A lot of pilots are failing because people are like, oh, I got to think of everything. And it's this really complicated thing that everybody hates to do. And we're really like, it's a really hard problem for us to solve, but amazing. We're going to build an agent that's going to be like a super genius for us. And the problem is if you don't have clarity on what that process is or the work you want the agent to do. We describe agents as semi-autonomous coworkers. Like we say our job is to be the orchestrators of a swarm of semi-autonomous agentic coworkers. And really what's happening there is you're welcoming this new inference-based coworker into your midst, but it needs context. It needs to know how you think about doing your job. It needs the benefit of the context that's locked in your team's head. And you need to get that context that we call a thing called the context singularity is our label for like getting all that tribal wisdom out of people's head, getting their experience all articulated as context that these agentic coworkers can then use. And that's hard. Like people have to learn how to invest in building that out. And like we have some tools and technical patterns to make that pretty simple for people. But it's much simpler than you might imagine. You could get started very, very easily and have a context repository that lets you make those agents do smarter things and make smarter decisions. But also like if you're in there and like your most senior people are like, no, we need the TPS report on pink paper. And the other person's like, oh no, the TPS reports go on purple paper. What are you, crazy? Like if you can't decide what good looks like yourself and you have kind of, I guess, like experience factor battles of different senior people with different perspectives, likely that's where the most value in your company lives, right? These very, very experienced people with all this knowledge and all this training and years of experience in the field, like guiding you to the right outcomes based on their own execution, taste, and experience. Like that, yeah, great. Except that's a terrible place to turn an agent loose because you can't tell it how to make those decisions. It's almost like saying, you have somebody who's been at your company for 20 years who solves your hardest problems. They spend an afternoon like taking a day one intern explaining how to do the job, and they're like, okay, go do it. Like, that's gonna fail. That poor kid is gonna like just have a disaster, the meltdown, and be fired. Yeah. And so it's the same kind of concept. Like, if you pick the right things, you have determinism. Your company knows how to do them, and there's like a clear process, clear outcomes, clear guardrails, everything else. Then you're gonna succeed. Yeah. And then it goes, it evolves from there, right? Sometimes you need extra governance. Sometimes you need ways of seeing if there's drift or bias in the mix. Sometimes you need human in the loop review, and you don't have those capabilities stood up yet. And so maybe don't do those things as the first agent that you try to turn on, or shoot smaller, like a part of a workflow instead of all of the workflow. And so aligning that to what your organization is capable of is really important.
No, I think there's something I want to call out that I think I'm hearing. I want you to validate it or correct it, which is that, when we look at a lot of roadmaps when it comes to the R&D tax credit, it's part of the rules, but essentially like we're used to seeing is like, this is a big roadmap towards a singular objective. It's going to take us 12 to 18 months. It's got all the, features and things that we're going to add to it. And there's probably a way of thinking that, we've built that has kind of reinforced that over the last however many years. And I'm almost hearing that like that thinking goes out the window when it comes to building these semi-autonomous agentic coworkers, where the life cycle should be much more shorter. The leash of what things do and the scope maybe should be more narrower. Update that. Is that what I'm hearing? I think it's a really interesting point.
I think that's true. So we've been in like innovation labs at big corporate think tanks and, all kinds of different firms along the way, but helping people build net new products, materializing the adjacent possible of like, okay, at the nexus of like tech and your strategic vision, what could be done that isn't being done now? And that's always been an iterative process, but there were these prolonged build cycles, right? You'd have to decide what to do, then you'd have to go build it. And we were big agile and lean product people, so we would go in increments along the way, but still like the net build times would be 3 to 4 months at a minimum, sometimes 2 years at a maximum. And right now, you can build the whole product so fast. It's better for these net new builds, these greenfield like R&D products in particular, to just build the thing and then iterate because it's so fast. The real resource is deciding what to build or what to correct. That's the long tentpole, not the build anymore. And so you're able to pivot kind of your direction for R&D with much shorter cycles. You should still have a roadmap of like where you're going and what kind of capabilities you want to, like foundational capabilities you want to invest in building. But we've seen some really interesting stuff where we have a bunch of internal, so all of this knowledge, we had to transform ourselves. We had to build a whole toolkit to transform our company to welcome these agentic coworkers into our midst, and the harness engineering we needed to do to actually become orchestrators of those agentic coworkers. And so a lot of the stuff we built up front was helping people think through these greenfield ideas where we were just trying to figure out, okay, what can we build? What strategic business objectives does it meet? Great. We'd transcribe those conversations and have them turn into blueprints, budgets, breakouts, phase development plans, capability development, and then prototypes, like all stitched together. And so we have a pretty strong partnership with Amazon these days, and they kick in a bunch of co-funding for us. So we're able these days to sit with somebody who has an active R&D program, possibly an R&D tax credit client. But like we can have a conversation about where they're going strategically, put some signposts along the way of like what they might want to do with R&D, take that transcript, turn it into a product spec and a definition and a budget, get real-time pricing information out of Amazon's like pricing resources, bundle it up in the appropriate like purple paper TPS report format to submit to Amazon. But they have this really great program because they really want to encourage people to use their resources. And so they'll co-fund it. And so we can go from like conversation to co-funding in a matter of hours after having a call with you. And so we've seen that be really successful because oftentimes when you want a new R&D initiative to come to fruition or come to light, like getting it started is hard. You have to, invest some cash. You have to convince executive sponsorship that the budget is worth it and that the R&D direction aligns with strategy. And so this massively lowers the bar. It allows you to sort of have that conversation and get it funded externally and sort of get a thing instantiated. This sort of overwhelming bias we have towards taking action it lets us stand up a thing for you really fast. And our clients have been stoked to see that happen.
Yeah. So just to be clear about this, like I'm curious, like what kind of costs are co-funded, but I just want to confirm Amazon will give you money to develop and test build.
Yeah, 100%. So you have to have a certain amount of spend with them, and the thing you want to build needs to consume some more services from Amazon, but that's pretty much like default of building these net new agentic systems that you don't have. And even if you have one, like adding on to it or expanding its use, it all counts. And they'll seed up to about $25,000 of proof of concept funding for you to go build a first thing.
Amazing.
And so, yeah, we had one of the startups we worked with along the way is this awesome business travel management company called TripKicks, run by an amazing CEO. I wound up having a conversation over a weekend with Jeff, and he was talking about the agentic future they wanted to get into. And so I transcribed it, packaged it up, submitted it for funding, and Amazon helped him sort of jump the gap from traditional SaaS services company over into an agentically powered company. And they foot the first part of the bill. So
that's amazing. I mean, I think it's amazing. Like, just a quick service call out. I mean, when you help a client get cash for the thing that you're helping them build, I'm sure that's a very happy client.
It is awesome. And I encourage everyone I meet, I'm just like, look, just tell us what you want to build. It's easy for us to transcribe that call and let's see, right?
Yeah.
And more often than not, we can get co-funding for it. And Amazon's really a great partner in that regard of accelerating people's innovation and builds. And so, yeah,
yes.
ask us for unreasonable things and we'll try to say yes and get you funded. So
I love that call out. I'm going to ask you one last question before we get into the rapid round. And that's about government. I think, we are all excited about the idea of having the semi-autonomous coworker. I'm curious how you think about putting up guardrails, and any experience around, what not to do would be very insightful for those listening, I'm sure.
I'll go back to my intern metaphor, right? You have that kid you train how to do the work, and you give them all the context in a manual, and you just set them loose and say, okay, go do the work.
Yeah.
Do you leave them alone forever and just assume they're going to do it all right?
No. You don't give them the company credit card, and exactly.
You check on their work, you evaluate it, you give them feedback, you correct it. Okay, well, that's called human in the loop feedback, right? And so that's the first form of governance, right? You want to make sure that you have some amount of feedback on what the agents are doing to make sure it's working. There are these systems we think we're over-indexed on our own learning and capabilities around developing evals. Those are systems that will observe the output in the work and look for drift or problems or issues, errors, things like that. And so there's some tools you can build that will let you do that. There's a whole governance around what's legally acceptable to do, and like where bias or other kinds of decision making gets into the mix, and you need compliance with some type of regulatory governance. Those are very important. But I will say, if you're picking the right first movements in agentic development, you're picking the things that have really minimal guardrail or governance needs, and you're getting started and using them as a forcing function to build core capabilities. And the mistake we see over and over in all these pilots that failed is they picked something that was too hard. They picked something that required all these capabilities to be evolved and functional, and all this like internal context to be present that they haven't even started harvesting, and a whole bunch of internal tools developed so the agents can take actions on their behalf, and then a whole eval framework to make sure it's not doing stupid things. And they have none of that. And so really it's about picking the right thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, a few things I'm hearing is, harvest the context, lower the bar for proof of concept, put up some guardrails, and get an amazing partner to help you through it. You've ordered an AI Sherpa. I love that.
Yeah. I've heard this company, Elephant Ventures, is really good at it. Their founder is kind of crazy, but I heard they're pretty good.
He's all right. Let me ask you rapid rounds. What favorite book can you think of that had a big influence on you?
Ender's Game, for sure. If you haven't read it and you're kind of that lone wolf foundery kind of a person, the overwhelming lesson is nobody's coming to save you. And so just pull yourself up and get it done.
Great. What's a habit or skill you wish you had that you absolutely do not?
I wish I had more meditative skills or habits to stay present and focused and keep the most important thing.
I can relate to that. What is your favorite productivity tool of 2026?
Claude, for sure. Claude Cowork. If you invest the time to learn how to use it, and it doesn't take much to get started, you could just offload so much of the motivation defeating administrative parts of your life to a Cowork buddy, and then focus on the more important kind of intellectually fulfilling parts of your job, or the things that get you out of bed in the morning. Nobody gets up to fill out TPS reports. I don't think.
I'm with you there. Last place you traveled for fun?
Oh man, last place I traveled for fun was in Florida. We had a fraternity reunion down in Orlando.
And if money were no object and you had to take a job for a week, what would it be?
Man, this was a tough one. I think probably like the director of like the FCC or something, mostly because I have a passion project in my mind that I will spend the rest of my life working on around the discernment of truth, like the objective measurement of like statistical difference from objective truth. And I think we're confronted by a crisis like that born from AI around what is true.
Yeah.
And the nature of human perception shifts, or how influenceable people are by the information they consume. Yeah. And right now we have no guardrails. People are able to consume a bunch of baloney and garbage, and they believe it because they consumed it. They, like most humans, don't really have an active discernment of truth loop. And so the thing I'm the most passionate about that I would want to do would be to just work on like a societal level installation of truth guardrails for the way that we share information and publish information and consume it, which is very panic inducing because it sounds a whole lot like censorship. And it's true, right? At some point, people need the social hinting that something isn't true, that they're consuming information that has questionable origins or questionable, who's paying for that information to be shown to you and what's their agenda, and is that information true or not, is the biggest challenge we're facing right now.
It's really important. It's tremendously profound. I think what I would say is a UPS driver. So that response that you gave me is going to make me think about it for the next hour. So kudos to you. And I would say that's the general theme. I think there's a lot of wisdom that you've shared. I think a lot of strategies that the nature of having, a few minutes together, it's hard to double click on it.
Thanks, Miguel.
Thank you for joining this episode. To make this conversation more actionable, I encourage you to write down one or two things that you took away. And if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, where I'm fairly active. Look for Miguel Alexander Centeno. And if you found value in this show, please subscribe on whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts. And stick around for the next show. What you learn might change your business.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Bottom Line. This podcast is brought to you by Centurion Firm, bringing you Fortune 500 tools and strategies to help small businesses and other organizations with tax, accounting, and technology implementation that maximize cash flow and long-term value. Learn more at centurionfirm.com.